You know, I mean, the Warriors, I mean, the Cavs tried to keep it close for a lot of that game, but when they broke all the way down, as you would kind of expect, right? I mean, this is a team that looked outmanned, overpowered, and outgunned from the initial tip. LeBron went for 51 points. They lost game one. If you have a player that good and he goes for 51, and by the way, Kevin Love added 21 points, and you don't win the game, that's disheartening. And at no point were they ever that close. I think LeBron had the best quote of all the quotes, which was that this is like playing the Patriots. You have to play a perfect game to beat them. And Cleveland couldn't. You absolutely couldn't play a perfect game with the squad that they had. But there are some interesting things that came out of this finals, right? Like Kevin Durant becomes finals MVP again. And people have to acknowledge that he's good. I mean, this is weird because people want to take away how good he is because of what he chose to do as a player, going to the Warriors where the path was going to be easier, where it wasn't going to be as hard for him. He wasn't going to have to try and figure out how to work with Russell Westbrook. And I know people thought he should have stayed in Oklahoma City, that the Oklahoma City team was close. But, I mean, we've all seen the Russell Westbrook show. It's not a good show. It's just not a good show. He dominates the ball a lot. He's hard to play with and get along with. And if you're Kevin Durant, why would you have to? Why would you want to? So no, I don't blame him or fault him for leaving in any way. And you know, we've talked about the reasons why on many occasions. I just think that with Durant, I honestly like watching him play when his shots are easier. I mean, struggling is not necessarily fun to watch. Kevin Durant being able to play one-on-one, which is what he's great at. He's the best one-on-one player in the entire league. It's Kevin Durant versus anybody, and there isn't a person in this league that can stop him from scoring when he's on. No one. There isn't a person. They haven't made a guy like that. He can score with anybody. So, no, I think that Kevin Durant winning Finals MVP, I think, validates him in the minds of a lot of people, even though they want to take it away from him, even though they want to take away how good he is, because he did go join the Warriors. But him being Finals MVP back-to-back years, and it also speaks to this team and how his ego, how the ego of the team is, right? Like no one really seems to care that Kevin Durant is Finals MVP, least of all Steph Curry, who seems to not really be bothered by it. He deserved just as much as Durant to win it. I'm not a big fan of co-MVP very often, but I thought they should have given him co-MVP. I think that if you had to choose one, you choose Durant. So I thought that decision was the correct decision. Reason being, Game 3 was a pivotal game. Game 3 was a tough game that needed to be won. You don't win that game, you let Cleveland back in the series, and I don't think that any of those Warriors were interested in any of that. You extend the series far longer than it needs to. Game 3 was a must-win for the Warriors if they wanted to get this sweep, and Kevin Durant played his best game on that day. Steph Curry was a no-show. And it's not like Durant had bad games in any of the other games. The first game wasn't good for him, but wasn't good by Durant standards. He still scored 23 points, still had 7 assists. I mean, his bad game was still a good game. When we say he had a bad game, when we say a guy like LeBron had a bad game, we mean that person had a bad game by their standards, right? So that brings me to my next thing about the NBA Finals that I noticed, which is the Cavs quit in that game. Like, they just fell apart. The Warriors started putting them on them, and there was nothing there. There was no fight. I understand it doesn't appear to be possible to come back from down 3-0. How much fight were you expecting? But people were still upset with LeBron for the amount of fight that the team had. And he scored 23 points. And again, you say that he didn't show up. You say that he had a bad game and that he gave up in game 4. I don't think he gave up. He just had a bad game by his standards. The 23 points normally is a good game. See, 23 points normally is a decent game. It's just not what we're accustomed to from LeBron. I don't think that means that he quit, but I also think that there's just something in the back of your mind that it felt pointless. It felt like a pointless game. It was a formality. Okay, so you avoid the sweep. Whatever. It felt like a formality. Just doing something pointlessly to do it. We knew the Cavs weren't going to beat the Warriors. Like, what difference does it make that they got swept versus losing in 5? What difference did it make? I don't think it made enough of a difference to warrant getting all up in arms about the level of effort given. And again, I didn't see a LeBron James that quit. I saw a team that looked defeated, and I saw a team that knew where this series was headed. Once you go down 3-0, that's why it was important that they won game 1, which was close. And that's why it was important that they won game 3, in which Steph and Klay played bad, because you don't get those kinds of opportunities very often, and they didn't capitalize on them. And that's a team problem. And LeBron's gone. He's out of there. He's not coming back. I wouldn't come back either. Where's LeBron going? Nobody knows. LeBron James has been very, very good in his career about keeping this kind of thing close to his chest. He doesn't necessarily tell you what he's thinking, where he's going. I remember when he left Cleveland to go to Miami, me and my friends were sitting around talking like, where is LeBron going to go? Where's he going to go? And the thought we had was, well, he's not going to leave Cleveland. He's the hometown kid. Why would he ever leave? And then he left, and he went to Miami. And then he was in Miami, and I thought, well, he's gotten titles in Miami. He sort of rules Miami now. I don't know if he leaves Miami. And then he goes back to Cleveland. And then he wins a title there. And now we know it's possible for LeBron to go any direction, to do anything, to go anywhere. The only issue that we have is we don't know where. He doesn't tell us. He keeps everything close to the chest. There are rumors. There are rumors about who he's going to be talking to. And you can kind of sort of logically deduce that, well, okay, he's not going to go anywhere that stinks. So where does that leave? But it still leaves a whole bunch of places LeBron James isn't telling us. But the whole summer of speculation is what we have left. And look, summer gets to be really hard to do talk radio, especially sports talk radio, because not a whole lot is happening. And I am here for the wild and aimless speculation. You better believe that. I am all about it. So we're going to get into all of that stuff. But another big thing that came out of the finals, I thought, was just more conversation. I like the conversation around sports sometimes more than I like sports. And one thing that came up was that James Worthy was talking about players that he saw in the NBA finals that he thought could have played in the 80s. And he said LeBron could have played in the 80s, and he said Draymond could have played in the 80s. And I agree. I 100% agree. I mean, and that's not even like really a hot take. LeBron James and his physicality, just the way that guy is built, and then the skill level that he has, very obviously could have played in the 80s. Draymond Green, with his personality, just on personality alone, like, let's not even get into the size of Draymond Green. Just based on personality, it's like he was already born to play in the 80s. He just missed several decades. Like, Draymond Green could have played in the 80s just based on his attitude. So I get all that too. But I think James Worthy missed a couple of guys, right? Because I do think that Steph could have played in the 80s. The reason why I think Steph could have played in the 80s is that Isaiah Thomas played in the 80s. Isaiah Thomas, not much bigger than Steph. I mean, the size is there, and Steph's a way better shooter than Isaiah Thomas. Granted, Isaiah Thomas played in a time period where you just didn't shoot the ball like that, because like he could have done it. He just didn't. But Steph shoots well enough. He's got long enough range. Yes, he'd have to get used to people beating him up. And I don't know if Steph could be MVP superstar Steph in the 80s. But could he have played? Yes, he could have played. Klay Thompson. Guy's got length. He's a 2 with the length of a 3. Of course he could have played in the 80s. And again, you add that three-point shooting ability, the ability to knock down any shot, defend multiple guys. I mean, if you're a two-way guy, I feel like you could have played in the 80s. I do. And I don't know. I feel it's a little. I don't feel it's disrespectful, but I feel like leaving them off that list. Yeah, LeBron could have played in the 80s. Yes, Draymond has an 80s attitude, but it's not like everybody playing in the 80s was a big guy. And I think that you have to say, well, if these guys played in the 80s, could they learn to be more physical? I do think that Steph could learn to deal with it. I don't think Steph would be more physical. I think Clay could be more physical, and I think he'd probably like it, too. So those are guys. And then obviously Kevin Durant's a great scorer. And, I mean, if you go on YouTube and just look up video of George Gervin, I mean, Kevin Durant plays like him. I don't want to say they're the same guy, but they're very similar. They're incredibly similar. Kevin Durant plays like him. Like, of course, Kevin Durant could have played in the 80s. He can score in his sleep. He can absolutely score in his sleep. But I think the more interesting question is, what guys from the 80s could play in today's game? Because it ain't all of them. You know, any big guy that has no range, that guy's now worthless in today's game. Can't play. But there's some guys in the 80s that I just think are really interesting in the thought experiment of them playing in today's game. A guy like Magic, I would love to see play in today's game. Would be beautiful. Would be absolutely brilliant. Magic Johnson and that offense that they ran with the Showtime Lakers was ahead of its time. It was way ahead of everybody. And you look at the way that the league is now, the way that a lot of teams operate in the fast break, the Showtime Lakers built that foundation. And of course, Magic Johnson, I think, could play in today's game, not just because he was such a brilliant passer and had such great court vision, but because of his size, that the NBA is actually starting to circle back around to bigger guards. When you look at the NBA draft that's upcoming, one of the names that pops up very often is Luka Doncic. And that guy is a gigantic guard. We've seen guys that are big at that position really start to come back around. A guy like Ben Simmons in Philadelphia is another guy that's a big dude that is a point guard. Big point guards are coming back. Magic Johnson was the original big point guard. If he were in today's game, he would absolutely dominate it. And the fact that Magic's not the best defender ever wouldn't really hurt him, because we have guys that are bad defenders at the point guard position, and we just cover them up. Like, Magic would be fine. In fact, I already know who I want to coach Magic Johnson. I would like Mike D'Antoni to coach Magic Johnson, because Mike D'Antoni already doesn't care whether or not you play defense. And you would score so fast. Can you imagine Magic Johnson in a Mike D'Antoni offense? It would be Magic Johnson on steroids. It would be bonkers. That is my favorite idea as far as time travel in sports goes. Would the absolute favorite. And my other one is Larry Bird, which seems obvious, but again, the shooting ability that Larry Bird has. Could you imagine Larry Bird if he played in an era where it was acceptable to shoot more threes? Yeah, to shoot more threes. He played in a time when he didn't have to. And when you didn't really do that, it wasn't common wisdom. It wasn't conventionally the way you played the game. So he didn't do it. But Larry Bird is a playmaker. He's got the ability to pass the ball. He's not the fastest, most explosive guy, but you don't need it in today's game. The way that a lot of these offenses work, it's about moving the ball more than it's about moving yourself. Larry Bird would do great. He moves the ball great. He moves well. And then on top of that, he has dominant level three-point shooting. Dominant level three-point shooting. Larry Bird would be a beast in today's game. Isaiah Thomas, I already mentioned that Steph could go back and play in the 80s because Isaiah Thomas played in the 80s. And if you think that Steph's not big enough, then how do you explain Isaiah Thomas? Like, Steph's big enough. He's 6'3". Like, we treat Steph like he's 2 feet tall. He's 6'3". And Steph is small by NBA standards. Steph is not actually small. Yeah, Steph could go back and play in the 80s. I think Isaiah Thomas would be brilliant in today's game. I think Isaiah Thomas would shoot the ball a whole lot more. Didn't really do that back then. And I think that Isaiah Thomas, just the leadership ability, which I think, I don't want to say is necessarily lacking as far as point guards go. The players come into the NBA so young that they sort of have to learn how to be leaders on the fly. A guy like Isaiah Thomas came into the NBA a natural leader. And that combined with the fact that he is also a great passer, he could score when he absolutely needed to and got his teammates involved. And he's, despite the size, a great defender. The thing that I think guards need to do to dominate in today's game, because there are just so dang many of them, you could trip and fall on a guard and have one good enough to lead a team to a finals. But he's a two-way defender, and you need to be a two-way defender in today's game. The guys that really struggle, I think, are the guys that either score or defend and can't really do both. This was a really big problem that Cleveland had in the finals. They didn't have a two-way guard. And some of those guards are just not even one-way guards. Just really had a big struggle there. So when you look at it, I think to say that Isaiah Thomas would play in today's game is not. I don't think that's a very big stretch of logic. I would just love to actually see Isaiah Thomas play in today's game. Maybe Tom Thibodeau would coach that team. But my number one player that I think played in the 80s that I would love to see in today's game would be a guy like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Because Kareem is a big, and we talk about bigs changing in the NBA all the time. Bigs disappearing, that position not meaning as much as it did. But you have in Kareem a guy with an unblockable shot. And I think Kevin Durant in the finals showed us how important it is to have the guy on your team with the unblockable shot. You could throw a ball into Kevin, and you're going to get 2 points. Right? The Warriors love to shoot threes. And Kevin can score those too. But when you just need points and you don't care what it is and where it comes from, two's as good as anything. And when it's guaranteed, when it's automatic, man, that changes the landscape of everything right there. Kareem had the skyhook, which was not blockable. You could not stop that shot. The only thing that you could do is pray that he miscalculated and that it wasn't going in. The prayer defense. That was the only thing that was going to stop Kareem from scoring. If Kareem played in today's NBA, he'd dominate. He also, incredible defender, gigantic wingspan, rim protector, and I know he's more skilled than most big men now. Most guys in the NBA that have jobs, like DeAndre Jordan still has a job, and DeAndre Jordan is a great defender. He's not skilled. Like it's all dives to the basket, alley-oops, and dunks. Kareem actually had a post game. If you could find a 7-footer in today's game that protects the rim, has a post game, and can score effectively and constantly, you usually praise the hell out of that guy. Right? Like Rudy Gobert's a guy, and Rudy Gobert's not even great in the post. He's just good. Rudy Gobert, good in the post. But he's a rim protector, big defensive guy, 7 feet tall, and hard to stop if he wants to score. Kareem is that, but great, but actually great. Wouldn't you like to see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar playing in the 2018 NBA? Like, what would that be like? We're listening to Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Our phone number, 423-800-8949, 423-800-8949. If you have a player from the 80s that you think you would like to see in today's game, or vice versa, player in today's game that you think could go back into the 80s and play. James Worthy thinks that Draymond Green and LeBron James could play in the 80s. I think that those are no-brainers. I think there are other guys in the league that could probably play back then. Like there's a bunch of obvious guys that I don't think can, right? Like Blake Griffin can't go back in the 80s and play. Apart from the fact that he is injury prone, his game is too, like the lob aspect of it is too reliant on everybody else. And I think Blake Griffin is a more complete player now, but he's still not consistent as a scorer, not a great leader. You know, like he's not one of those guys that you boot up the time machine and go, well, boy, I wonder if you could play with Blake Griffin. Not really. So it's not everybody in the league, but there are certain talents that I just think I'd love to see. Like I'd love to see Russell Westbrook in the 80s. If you talk about Draymond Green having the 80s attitude, what on earth would you say about Russell Westbrook, who pretty much is anger personified? Like if you gave anger a face, it would be Russell Westbrook's face. It would be Russell Westbrook's face. You're listening to All New Nougat Radio, NougatRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose. And the Washington Capitals are the Stanley Cup champions in hockey. I know Preds fans really wanted it to be the Predators. At least the Predators getting a chance to go to the Stanley Cup finals and play. But we lost Pekka Rinne halfway through the playoffs. I don't know what happened to that guy. He was great all season long, but had a meltdown for the ages. But the Washington Capitals are the world champions, and Alexander Ovechkin waited a very long time for this. He's a great hockey player. Alex winning the Stanley Cup is like if Dan Marino won a Super Bowl finally, or somebody with all the numbers, known for being a great offensive guy, known for being one of the greats, and just didn't win a title. Charles Barkley. Like if Charles Barkley won a title, what would he act like? Because Alexander Ovechkin finally won a title. No team in the last 10 years has more wins than the Washington Capitals. Alexander Ovechkin finally wins a title. And every time I've seen a picture or a video of Alexander Ovechkin, my man is hammered beyond recognition. He is gone. Because he's been partying nonstop since they won the Stanley Cup Finals last Tuesday. It's been a week. And the last video I saw of Alexander Ovechkin was him making snow angels in a fountain in front of a mall. I mean, anytime you see him, he is drunk out of his mind. He threw the first pitch at a Nationals game, and it was a terrible first pitch. And it's not a terrible first pitch in the way that, like, he didn't know what he was doing. He was terrible. It was a terrible first pitch in the way that you throw a first pitch when you are heavily intoxicated and you are throwing a pitch. Alexander Ovechkin has not stopped partying. And my only thought is he might not actually be ready to go next season because he's not going to be done anytime this summer. Like, I know it's a big deal. This is the biggest accomplishment of his life. And if you had a goal and it was the biggest thing that you could accomplish in life, imagine that. Imagine what that is. And you finally achieved it after years of failing and everyone saying you couldn't do it and nobody believed in you, and then you finally got over the hump. Could you actually believe how hard you would party? Because Alexander Ovechkin is partying like his life depends on it. And I don't know if my man's going to be ready to go at the beginning of next season. He has not yet begun to slow down the party. We're listening to All New Nougat Radio on NougatRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. With Keon Rose. Julio Jones holding out. Next.
Traffic, news, and information. Nougat Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2, 1. Chatter, Nougat Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
An arrest was made in the double stabbing case from Cleveland. 2 people were stabbed. James Burden, who's 22 years old, from Cross Street, was charged with 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Deputies say they first got the call at Bell Road Southeast late at night, reporting 2 victims had been stabbed. When they arrived, the 2 victims were treated and taken to the hospital, and Mr. Burden had to be held down because he was, quote, acting crazy. Burden was taken to the county jail, where he was booked on 2 counts. He's held without bond. Fire investigators say faulty wiring caused a fire at the Chateau Royal Apartments on South Germantown Road. One family was left homeless because of the blaze, the Red Cross stepping in to assist. The Saudi Daisy Police Department is trying to track down a missing man. Jerry Leroy Guest was last seen May the 30th in Saudi Daisy. His family is offering a $250 reward for his finding. Russell Stroud, Nougat Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nougat Radio 92.7 FM.
Chattanooga weather. Any lingering showers will diminish through your nighttime. Muggy overnight, lows near 70. For Tuesday, a better coverage of scattered showers and thunderstorms, mainly for the afternoon and evening hours. Highs into the mid and upper 80s. A few isolated afternoon storms, upper 80s on Wednesday. Tired of the pressures and hassles of car shopping? Come see what more people are making the short drive to Jackson Chevrolet Buick GMC in Lafayette or online at jacksongm.com. That's Jackson Chevy Buick GMC in Lafayette. And I'm Source E12 Meteorologist Patrick Moore.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever seen one so big?
Whoa, look at the size of that.
Look at this little itty bitty one.
Wow, that's really small.
They have them big, small, and everything in between. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives at the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. We're talking about over 40 brands of knives, including Benchmade, WR Case & Sons, Booker, and all the Frost Cutlery brands. Now, Sam, you've been to the cutlery shop. Is it amazing?
Spectacular. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. They have knives, swords, kitchen knives, ammo, and reloading supplies, plus survival gear.
It's the knife shop at Frost Cutlery, open 7 days a week. Hey, girls, you're going to love this. We're going to the knife shop.
Hey, let's not tell them they have ammo and loading supplies.
The knife shop at Frost Cutlery opens 7 days a week. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives. You're going to love the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. The knife shop.
And tell them David Toulis sent you.
Do you hear that? That, my friend, is not what you're thinking. That is the new 2018 Indian Chieftain Dark Horse. Yeah, Indian. Indian motorcycle is more than a bike. It's an experience, an American icon, and Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga is the only place you'll find their new 2018 line. Are you ready to ride? Join the club. Go to Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga. Just look for the sign, 153 and Amnicola. Indian Motorcycle, the true American original.
Hey, Karen, you need me for that 1 o'clock?
Yes, Cheese, please. Karen, did you get the quarterlies done? Yep, they're filed in the cabinet.
Karen, can you describe the initiatives to the new hire? Thanks.
Oh, sure. Full-bodied, some floral notes, maybe a hint of dark chocolate.
Am I in the right department?
Got wine on the mind? Come unwind at Virgola. Italian wine, oysters, caviar, cheeses, and more. Perfect after work or a romantic date night. Virgola Italian Wine Bar, 608 Georgia Avenue.
Chattanooga Paint and Decorating would like to remind you it's so hot out there. And guess what? Your deck is taking a beating. It's probably starting to show wear. If you're hosting Friends for the 4th, get your deck entertainment ready with a fresh coat of stain and protect it from heat, sun, and rain with a quality sealant. If you want to get to work, Chattanooga Paint and Decorating want to help you. For exterior paint, stains, sealants, and supplies, stop by Chattanooga Paint and Decorating today on Hicks and Pike across from Valvoline or online at chattanoogapaint.com.
Nuga Radio. Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7.
Nuga Radio.
We're listening to all new Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Plus with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. So, Hall of Fame voters. Why was that so abrupt? Hall of Fame voters. Is there a vetting process that we need for people who vote for the Hall of Fame? I'm talking about in the NFL right now, but baseball writers too. Because Terrell Owens is going to be in the Hall of Fame, finally. And he is a very accomplished wide receiver. He has a lot of very big numbers. I mean, over 15,000 receiving yards. He's third all-time in receiving yards. He's third all-time in receiving touchdowns. So, I mean, Terrell Owens is very decorated. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's a first-ballot caliber Hall of Famer, but he was never voted in to the Hall of Fame in large part because of his attitude and his personality, but that really shouldn't play a part in it. I think Terrell Owens really is one of the great wide receivers of all time. And if you've watched him play, and a lot of us got to, and there's no way to believe that this guy didn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame on the very first ballot. And the thing that I find to be most alarming about this is that the pettiness of Hall of Fame voters is showing up still, because Terrell Owens has said he's not going to go to his Hall of Fame ceremony. He's going to snub the Hall of Fame that snubbed him for so many years. And, Steve Young is trying to convince him to go to the Hall of Fame ceremony so that at least you don't offend the other guys who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's a fraternity. It's a brotherhood. And you don't want to offend those guys just because the league didn't treat you well and because the writers and the voters didn't treat you well. And I think Steve Young is right, but it's up to Terrell Owens to decide that. The issue is that one of the voters said anonymously that if he had known that Terrell Owens wasn't going to go to the Hall of Fame ceremony, he wouldn't have voted him into the Hall of Fame. And this is the kind of thinking that has a guy like Terrell Owens, with all the accolades that he's got, the 6 Pro Bowls, the Super Bowl appearance, the thousands of yards. It's that kind of thinking that gets a guy that deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer not in the Hall of Fame. Why does it matter whether or not he doesn't want to go to the ceremony? Being in the Hall of Fame is now not about whether or not you want to be in the ceremony. And we have all kinds of discussions about who is and isn't a Hall of Famer, and is this guy on the bubble? And I think that those are valid conversations to have. What doesn't get to be a valid conversation, though, is this guy offended my sensibilities, so I don't want him in the Hall of Fame. That's not how the Hall of Fame works. Either you are good enough to get in, or you're not good enough to get in. And you don't factor in other things like a person's attitudes. You don't factor in stuff like their political beliefs. So we've seen in Major League Baseball, a guy like Curt Schilling is probably going to have a lot of trouble getting into the Hall of Fame just based on the early outlook of it. And I think part of that does play into the fact that Curt Schilling has a lot of really crazy political opinions. And it puts him in a bad spot with the writers who vote him in. But that's not baseball. That's not what you get into the Hall of Fame for. Otherwise, there are a number of guys in every sport, basketball, football, baseball, that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame for their humanitarian efforts, for being good people. But you know what? Being in the Hall of Fame is not about being a good person. You can be a bad person. You can be a jerk. Michael Jordan was a jerk. But he's in the Basketball Hall of Fame because he was a great basketball player, arguably the greatest. It's not about how nice you are. And it's certainly not about whether or not you attend the ceremony. You realize that we have people who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame after they've died. Like, they can't attend the ceremony. They're dead. If Terrell Owens doesn't want to go, he's still a Hall of Famer. He's still good enough to be in the Hall. Like, the Hall of Fame, the more that we have these writers and the more that we have these voters tinker with the credentials of what it means to be in the Hall of Fame, I would rather you vote in a guy that was borderline and maybe shouldn't be in there than not vote in a guy who should definitely be in there, but you didn't like his attitude, you didn't like his personality, you didn't like the way that he talked to the media, you didn't think he was a good role model for kids. None of that has anything to do with the game. None of it. Not 1 second of it. The only thing that is a off-the-field decision that affects the game that I think should play into your mindset is drug use. Did this person do performance-enhancing drugs? Not even recreational drugs. Because if the guy played well, but if he smoked marijuana, let's say, if he played the game well, what does that have to do with him being in the Hall of Fame or not? It has Nothing to do with that. And so I look at Terrell Owens and I go, this hardly seems fair. And I do like the move from Terrell Owens. He's kind of given it back to the Hall of Fame because he should have been in there ages ago. And so the little petty excuse of, well, if I had known that he wasn't going to go, I wouldn't have voted him in. If you had voted him in when you were supposed to vote him in, he would definitely have gone. Terrell Owens, all Terrell Owens wanted, and the only thing that all of us ever want, is to be recognized for what he did well. He was a great wide receiver. He played the game well. He left it all out on the field. That matters. And that matters in the context of being in the Hall of Fame. That's arguably all that being in the Hall of Fame is about. Doing your job to the best of your ability and doing it well and being recognized for doing it. That doesn't describe T.O., then who does it describe at that point? What is the Hall of Fame good for if you can keep a guy out of it because he didn't act the way that you liked him to act? It's crazy. Now, I'm glad T.O.'s in because there's a number of problematic wide receivers that aren't, like, Randy Moss isn't in yet, but if T.O. can't get in because you didn't like the way that he acted, then you can't let Randy Moss in. T.O. is ahead of Randy Moss in a lot of statistical categories. Randy Moss is also a crazy wide receiver. Like, wide receivers are generally crazy people. It's just the nature of their job. It just that personality. Very few people are just mellow wide receivers. No, you have Chad Johnson, you have Terrell Owens, and you have Randy Moss, Keyshawn Johnson, and give me the damn ball. I mean, you have all those things. That's the kind of person that position attracts, because you maybe touch the ball 3-4 times a game, and you are expected to be good with it every single time it's thrown in your direction. Right? Like, it's different from quarterback. In quarterback, you touch the ball, you've got it every play, you've got it every possession. The ball's in your hand all the time. You're not as desperate for the attention. In fact, you probably like some of it to go away. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com. 92.7 FM. Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones is holding out. He signed a 5-year deal 2 years ago. The deal's not yet up. Julio Jones wants to renegotiate that contract and get more money, and he's not going to show up to camp, and he probably won't show up to the season either if he does not make the money. He doesn't make it, right? And I empathize with Julio Jones. And the reason why I do is because fans take players for granted all the time, especially in the NFL. The NFL is the most confusing sport to me so far as fandom goes, because very often we treat the owners like they're relatable in any way. Like, we look at athletes and go, you make millions of dollars. The owners make billions. I mean, they're even less like you than players are. But we always take the side of the owners. I was on NFL.com and I was reading the story about how Julio Jones was holding out, and I made the mistake of going down into the comments section, which is a Facebook comment section. It's built into the NFL's website. And there were fans that were talking about how greedy Julio Jones was and how dare he ask for more money? Didn't you sign a 5-year deal? Didn't you commit to this? Guys, teams don't commit to players all the time. Teams get guys to sign 5-year deals, 4-year deals, 3-year deals, and then 1 or 2 years into the deal, if you're not any good, they just cut you and they don't pay you the money. Guys get released by NFL teams without being paid all the time. Constantly. All the time. And yet, no one makes a stink then. No one makes a stink when there's a guy that's underperforming and he gets cut. But what difference does it make, right? Because the team signed a deal. They signed it for 5 years. So you're Julio Jones and you signed a deal and now you're outperforming it. You think you're outperforming it. I'll leave that up for the Falcons to decide. And you want to renegotiate the contract. You want to make more money. You see a lot of things going on. Julio Jones is a smart dude. What do you see if you're Julio Jones? You see how much more money other wide receivers are making. You see that the team drafted Calvin Ridley, who's young and is, quite frankly, younger you, right? Fast, strong, can high point the ball, can catch it all over the field. I'm not saying Calvin Ridley is going to come in and replace Julio Jones, but as Julio Jones gets older and Calvin Ridley gets closer and closer to his prime, we're going to see Julio Jones. What happened to Julio Jones? What happened to Roddy White when Julio showed up? Right, Julio erased Roddy White from the football team. Eventually. Just that's how youth works. And if you're Julio, you're like, oh, this is really the last chance that I can really, really get paid on this team. And I say, if you have a chance to get paid, you take it. I will not ever squabble with anybody on trying to get paid. You don't have guaranteed contracts in the NFL, and it works two ways. You don't get to say the player's being greedy when he feels he's outperformed his contract, but the team's not being greedy for cutting him if they feel he's underperformed his contract. We have no sympathy for guys who get cut in the NFL. None. Meanwhile, guys who work really hard in the NFL, feel like they've outperformed their contract, when they want some money, they're greedy. They don't know how to stick to commitment. And that could be a fair criticism. But where is it from the teams? Look, you look at the NBA. NBA contracts are not negotiable. Plain and simple. Team signs you to a deal. If the deal is bad, they can buy out your contract so they can get you off the team, but they're still paying you all the money. All the money is guaranteed. All the money that you're owed, you can get. Teams in the NBA, you sign a bad contract, you eat the whole thing. Not in the NFL. You sign a bad contract, what does it matter? If the guy's not performing, you cut him. Right? You pay him the money that he was guaranteed for that year, but you don't pay him for any of the following years. Like, NFL teams are notoriously stingy and notoriously break commitment all the time. And then when players do it, we have the biggest problem in the world with it. It's the most lopsided thing in sports. It's the weirdest relationship, and you just think that the fans would be on the side of the players because it is unfair. But no, we're not. We don't. I mean, I'm looking at Falcons fans throw Julio Jones, who is the best player on the football team. He's the best player on the football team. And fans are throwing this guy under a bus for wanting more money. For what? Noticing that he's the best thing to happen to this football team? When Matt Ryan signs a monster deal, and you're Julio Jones, and you're looking at Matt Ryan, and you're just going, man, I know I'm better than this dude. Because you are. And you know it. Like, Matt Ryan's career is linked to Julio Jones. And Julio wanting to get paid by the Falcons makes all the sense in the world. It would make less sense to me, actually, if for some strange reason he didn't want to get paid. Julio is one of the best receivers in football, and depending on the season, is the best receiver in football. There's not very many guys in football better than Julio Jones. Antonio Brown's one. Antonio Brown. It's Antonio Brown. I think Antonio Brown is the only football player at that position better than Julio Jones. Because I can't say AJ Green right now. Odell Beckham is injured. And even when he was healthy, I wouldn't say he was better than Julio. So he's great. DeAndre Hopkins in Houston, he's good too. But Antonio Brown's better than Julio Jones. And that's about the end of the list of guys better at that position than Julio Jones. So no, I don't know what fans are thinking when the rebellion is there. And I was talking to Sam Jordan earlier, host the Locker Room Show with Sam Jordan before this one, and Sam was saying that it sets a bad precedent for Atlanta if Julio Jones holds out and they pay him. And I disagree with that. And here's why. The NFL is a meritocracy. You get what you earn. You get nothing more, and you could actually get less. Julio Jones wants more money. He's going to hold out for more money. If you're Atlanta, does it set a bad precedent if you pay him? No. Because how many more Julio Joneses do you have? Life's not fair. People get treated differently. Tom Brady and Gronk held out for OTAs, which in Patriots land, that's like holding out for camp. Okay, OTAs are voluntary. Most teams, it doesn't mean anything. For the Patriots, it means a lot. Okay, it's a part of the Patriot way. It's part of do your job. They missed it. Did they get punished? Were they in trouble? No. Gronk got more money. And this is the Patriots we're talking about. The Patriots never renegotiate. The Patriots never give you more money. Like, especially when it looks like you've taken a lot of injuries and your body's getting older. The Patriots don't give people more money, but they gave it to Gronk because they know how good Gronk is. And only Gronk can get away with doing that. Have you noticed that Gronk gets to be the Patriot that has fun? Most other guys don't. But the Patriots know that it's much harder to win games without Gronk. So you deal with it. This is the one guy that doesn't fit the identity of our team, but it's harder to win games without him. So we deal with it. Look at Julio Jones. There's only one of those. What you're hoping for if you're Atlanta is that Calvin Ridley is really a lot like Julio Jones, and then you can kind of not really pay him. But if you're Julio, there's only one of you. This does not set a bad precedent. No, it doesn't. I mean, anybody else on the team, you're not like Austin Hooper, tight end. I like Austin Hooper. I think Austin Hooper's a very good football player. If Austin Hooper holds out and says, I want more money, it's never coming. The Atlanta Falcons are not about to hold up their whole life for Austin Hooper. They maybe don't even call his agent. They've called Julio Jones' agent because they're at least thinking about paying him because he's Julio flipping Jones. That's why. Because he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. There's a handful of those guys. And if you have one, what you do is you try not to lose him, or you try not to put him in a position where he's not going to be playing his best because he wasn't in training camp. You don't want those problems. I think it's smart of Atlanta to reach out to his agent and try and see if they can work something out, see if they can get something done. The Falcons have $7.2 million of cap space. I guess it's time to use it. I guess it's time to use it because you have to. Like, I don't know if you can completely restructure the deal or anything, and I don't know. It's not exactly clear exactly how much money Julio Jones is asking for. Just that he seems to believe that the contract that I signed last time, I've outperformed that and I'd like more money. And it's completely fair because if Julio Jones underperformed that contract by a lot, if it looked like he couldn't play anymore, the team would cut him. And they wouldn't pay him. Isn't that crazy? I'm not saying be completely sympathetic towards players. I think you're making money to play a game. But if a team can mercilessly cut you without asking you, then a guy should be able to hold out to get a few more bucks. You're listening to all new Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Collect with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate you. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 24 hours.